Silly little me got in too deep again. Just wanted to drown, but I guess I'll swim instead. Because sorrow's not a friend that I intend to keep. And I don't know how I'm ever gonna sleep. Silly, silly little me. Silly little me. Silly little me just doesn't matter. Same mistakes won't break the pattern. I'm always gonna trust you when it's wrong. I bet you can't guess who I wrote this song for. Not silly, silly little me. Silly little me. Silly little me can't seem to see who you really are. And silly little me keeps trying to be who you're looking for. And silly little me just wants to be not so silly anymore. Not so silly anymore. Silly little me pretends it's no big deal. Still wanna love you, but I gotta let the feelings heal. Wait for the call that you're never gonna make. What do I think you're even gonna say? Too silly little me. Silly little me. Silly little me can't seem to see who you really are. And silly little me keeps trying to be who you're looking for. And silly little me just wants to be not so silly anymore. Not so silly anymore. Silly little me can't seem to see who you really are. And silly little me keeps trying to be who you're looking for. And silly little me just wants to be not so silly anymore. Not so silly anymore. Why can't you just love? Silly little me. Why can't you just love?